Welcome to yet another edition of Red and Black, where your conservatism is not just the color that you're used to. I'm Lenny McAllister, and I'm here with my co-host to answer the decades-long question: who has been more offensive over the last decade, Dave Chappelle or former Raiders coach John Gruden? Let me go ahead and throw that question out there, and I'm going to go to Jeff first because Jeff's down there and he's closer to Las Vegas than the rest of us are. You've probably seen the latest from Dave Chappelle, and you've heard about the NFL emails. Who do you think is more offensive and maybe even more egregious?
You know, judging by the reaction to the two, I'm going to go with Dave Chappelle. And you know what? It kind of proves what he said in his special. You can shoot a black man, but you better never hurt a gay person's feelings. And now, keep in mind, he did the special over a week ago, and they're still mad about it. They're still trying to cancel him. The stuff about John Gruden, that's going to be gone in a few days.
Yeah, and so is John Gruden, too. So there's that.
Yeah.
We'll talk about Dave Chappelle next week. I brought it up as a teaser because Melanie Collette brought it up to us this week to say, hey, maybe we should talk about this. I said, well, we'll talk about this week, but a whole lot next week. Ma'am, any thoughts on Gruden versus Chappelle versus what words you can't say, whose feelings you can't hurt and can't hurt?
I'm completely biased because I absolutely adore Dave Chappelle. I think he's hilarious, completely politically incorrect, which is how you should. Listen, you need to make fun of each other's differences. I have friends from all different backgrounds, and we constantly like burn each other constantly about each other's differences. And I think it's a fun and great thing to do when you really love each other. If you're not burning each other at the same time, that's not real love. If you can't roast your besties, you're not really friends.
Well, that's different for you because you're still besties with ex-husbands. For the rest of us, you can't burn people that you're in love with because you'll be sleeping on the couch. I'm just putting that out there right now. You got these weird rules going on based on how many martinis you've had today and your other the pre-show. You all got to tune into the pre-show. You know what we were talking about then. I digress. Don't you dare grab wine. You just came from a dinner date, you in a corner. Question for you. When you were writing All in the Family with Norman Lear and these offensive jokes where everybody got offended came up, did you realize that you couldn't do those same exact jokes 50 years later?
No, I did not. And in fact, when I spoke to Archie and Edith, I said, hey, look, really? We are funny. We're doing these jokes and let's move forward. So I didn't know. Weeping. I'm weeping at this point. I am really weeping because Archie. And then don't forget when George came over, there was all that. Mm-hmm. And Lionel.
Those were the days. See, Jeff's too young to get that joke. That was a good joke, Jeff. That was what they played on the piano, and those were the days, and they longed at each other. And you're too young. You don't even remember what show we're talking about.
Here's what I gotta say. Here's what I gotta say. I'll know that we've gotten into the toilet when they start trying to cancel Blazing Saddles.
Oh yeah,
that's my line. That's the line that
you
can't cross me. That is my red line.
No,
if
that's
they come
my
after
red
Blazing
line.
Saddles, I will lead an armed insurrection. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to jump into a topic before we jump into something serious because something jumped off over the last 24 hours that I do think we need to talk about with the audience. Kind of talk about the global ramifications of it, not from a if there's going to be a war perspective, but just kind of the tensions in the world. But to the sillier stuff for just a second, folks. What happened to the word satire? It's as if you can't be satirical anymore. All in the Family was satirical with Archie Bunker's bigotry. There are other things in the world that are satirical. The whole essence of comedy, it's supposed to be so absurd it makes you laugh, but just has just enough truth in it to make you think, which is why Richard Pryor and Eddie Murphy and Dave Chappelle. And I won't even go into the dude that used to do the Jell-O pudding pops, but that's what made him a genius before he did some other crazy things that made him just, sick. But what happened to satire, Jeff?
You know, as somebody who writes satire on a regular basis, I'm telling you, it's getting harder and harder and harder as each year goes by. And a lot of it is because everything is so stupid that it's hard to exaggerate things to the point where people will say, okay, yeah, that's satire. But the other thing, too, is that it's not that satire is an issue, because nobody complains about The Onion. People love The Onion, but they will come after the Babylon Bee, right?
Yes.
So it's only satire when it goes the wrong way that it's a problem. That's when you get the fact checkers pretending like they think that it's real, or pretending like they think that the Babylon Bee is actually trying to misinform people, when it is abundantly clear that it's satire. They will actually go after that. They don't like comedy when it hits them, or when it hits people who they pretend to care about so that they can virtue signal. That's the only reason that they're mad at Dave Chappelle, is because they can use transgenders to virtue signal and show how wonderful they are, because they're going to pretend to be outraged by the things that he said. Which, if you actually watch his specials and actually watch everything in context, even if you disagree with the points he's making, you know he's not trying to hurt transgender people. You know he doesn't hate transgender people. He just has certain opinions, but they take it out of context, or a lot of them don't even watch the specials, and they just try to see the quotes afterwards and then pretend like they understand what he was saying. No, it's absurd. So yeah, this isn't about satire. This is about politics.
Well, I mean, you know, to that, I would say, picture it, 1910. There I was in Africa, walking through the streets of Africa. So before we even got to the Golden Girls and Sophia, we were picturing it, 1910, Africa. There I was. There were elephants there. You know, it's just kind of, the whole thing is just so stupid. It's satire, folks. It's funny. If you don't like it, don't watch it.
But on a serious tip, I honestly think that somewhere in their subconscious, they know that their situation is like really twisted. That's why they don't want people making fun of them. Like, they don't want, like, you can't joke about that, because I think deep down, like I said, somewhere in their subconscious, they know it's twisted. So you can't even possibly make fun of them. Because they know, like, you say the sky is blue, right? You say the sky is blue. If somebody looked up at the sky and said, no, the sky is red, you would send them to an eye doctor, right? And tell them, you know, something wrong with your eyes. In no other area of life do we have someone saying that something is the complete opposite of what the reality is, as far as transgenderism is concerned. Yeah, but say, you know what? But hold on. Let's go up and build things up. Like, that's the only area of life where we do that.
Well, it's not the only area. I mean, there's other things that we go back and forth with, but let's jump out of the specifics for a second. Let's just go back to the whole essence of the fact that, you know, Chappelle seems to maybe have a point. I know we weren't going to talk about Chappelle, but daggone it, Melanie, you convinced me. I mean, there's something to be said about the fact that you can pick fun with certain tragedies. Again, it's the old axiom, and you hear this in the Black community all the time. We can joke about slavery. We can joke about the civil rights movement. Everybody has a joke about Dr. Martin Luther King and the I Have a Dream speech. And Dave Chappelle, look, like the late Charlie Murphy said on the Chappelle show, you know, line steppers, you got to check them. Dave Chappelle's been line stepping for 20 years now. This is not something new to him. And he's line stepped with slavery. He is line stepped with a whole lot of other stuff. O.J. Simpson, Michael Jackson, R. Kelly. I mean, he's been line stepping for a while, but nobody said anything when he had the time travelers going back in time to get vengeance on white slave masters because it was slavery, and we can joke about that. But he never went down the path as far as the Jewish Holocaust from World War II, because that's off limits. And that kind of seems to be his point, right, Dr. Metzler, which is like, okay, satire applies to some things, but not to all things, because some things are too sensitive. But what's exactly too sensitive? I mean, the Chinese and the Japanese and the warring that they had, and the sex slavery that went on during World War I and World War II there, can we joke about that, or we shouldn't joke about that, versus the Holocaust, versus slavery, versus everything else?
No, but I think that's, you know, absolutely right. And the only thing that I would say is, you all know I'm doing a lot of work in New York City now, and I'm moving up into a deluxe apartment in the sky. So so as we talk, I finally got a piece of the pie. So there
Are
we
your
have it.
beans burning on the grill though? That's
There
really
you
the
go.
question.
They are.
Well,
You didn't know I knew that part of the song, did you, Jeff? I ain't think so.
Mhm.
Go ahead,
you
Dr.
know,
Archie.
I posted a meme on social media the other day that was of Dave Chappelle, and the meme said, "I said the N word 5,000 times, and nobody said anything. In fact, Comedy Central offered me $50 million to say it some more,
Mm-hmm.
and
That's right.
nobody had a problem
Mm-hmm.
with what he said. But if you mess with the alphabet, folks, now you got an issue."
Yeah, the alphabet soup, it is what it is.
But I think Chappelle. I mean, people like Chappelle, or even like Bill Burr,
Yeah.
or even a George Carlin.
Right.
They come from an era of comedy when comedy was actually funny,
Funny,
and it was
right.
actually intended to be funny.
Yeah.
So you would make fun of everybody.
Everybody.
You would make fun of members of the alphabet community. You'd make fun of
Yeah.
Black people. You'd make fun of white people, Latinos, anybody. You could make fun of anybody, and people understood that these are jokes and that there's no animus involved. I mean, even a white comedian, like people like Gary Owens,
Mhm.
white guy, makes fun of Black people.
Yeah.
And Black people don't get mad because they understand where it's coming from. But I think this is part of the left's effort to, in my opinion, to reform comedy and essentially destroy it. You've got people out here who want to get clapter and not necessarily laughter.
Right.
What's his name? Childish Gambino,
Yeah.
I can't remember. Don Glover. He talked about how how a lot of comedians, because he does stand up too. He talked about how a lot of comedians aren't there to make the audience laugh. They're there to make them clap, which means that they're just going to say a lot of political things that everybody agrees with. So that they'll say clap for you, say, yeah, I agree with that. No, comedians are supposed to push the edge. And that's what the left wants to get rid of. They want to destroy comedy. They can't cancel Dave Chappelle. So we can be confident about that. And that's a good thing. But what about other comedians coming up who actually appreciate the art of comedy?
Are they trying to, and this, again, we can do this maybe for a whole hour, and I'm not trying to do this for a whole hour, but it's a fascinating conversation, I think. So here's the question, right? Is the left really trying to cancel comedy? Because look, I guarantee you, we know what works on a sitcom, right? For example, and this is something that conservatives can't stand about sitcoms. Who's the butt of a lot of the jokes in sitcoms? The traditional nuclear dad. Especially if he's a white guy. He's usually described as a geek. He's out of step. He's out of touch. He can't dance. He's trying to be cool. He looks bad. And he's usually the person that gets, oh, Dad, you're embarrassing me. That type of role. When you tell jokes about the nerdy white guy who can't get the ladies, and you make the little innuendos about his sexual prowess and this, that, and the other, that's seen as being game. So is the left really trying to cancel comedy or that type of satire, as Jeff is trying to say? Or are they really just trying to recraft the rules, if they're doing that, to say, okay, you can pick on some people, you can't pick on other people, which kind of goes to Chappelle's point once again.
Yeah, and they're trying to destroy comedy as we know it. So yeah, they are trying to reform it. They're not trying to not have comedy at all, but they're trying to transform it in a way that promotes the agenda that they want to promote. That's why the whole clapter thing is an issue, because clapter is about politics, and it's about specific politics. You're not going to get clapter for making fun of people on the left. You get clapter when you make fun of Trump and you make fun of conservatives. So that's what they're trying to do.
And quite frankly, I think from a broader perspective, that they're trying to redo the narrative about what family means, about what they don't want the nuclear family to be normal. They're trying to normalize different behaviors and they're trying to make it out to be like the nuclear family. Studies say that the nuclear family is the healthiest family for kids. Well, they're trying to do away with those types of narratives. And one way to do it is to make sure that nobody laughs or that they cancel someone who makes fun of their lifestyle.
Well, yeah, I think in part, that's largely correct. The issue of comedy, it is just as the left is trying to do with most of everything, they're trying to not only get a hold of the narrative, but create and control the narrative. It is comedy if I say it's comedy using the following criteria, which can change from minute to minute. But that was never the point of comedy. And I'll go back to what Jeff said earlier, which is you try to cancel Blazing Saddles, we got a problem.
Yep.
But when's the last time you've seen Blazing Saddles aired though? Like it used
No,
to air,
no.
like once a year somewhere. I haven't seen Blazing Saddles on cable anywhere or heard anybody
Because
it.
Didn't you get the email? It's racist.
But what's unfortunate about it though is that it's not racist. The whole movie is about making fun of racism. It's a movie against racism.
Right,
every single person who is racist in that movie is portrayed in a negative light.
And that's the point.
But they've got us so sensitive that even critiquing racism in the way that they in a way that doesn't line up with the way they want to fight racism, even that's a problem.
Right. It is, and that's the point of Blazing Saddles, is to make fun of racism.
And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to recenter us back on something real quick, because it's kind of interesting that we're talking about this conversation right now, because the lack of tolerance for sides that disagree with us has now gotten to a point in time where we're starting to see attacks on politicians once again. David Ames, who was an MP over in Great Britain, he ended up being stabbed to death at a constituency meeting just over the past 36 hours or so. And our condolences go out to his family and to Great Britain overall as a nation. But what I want to tie what we were just talking about with to this is simply this. I'm going to start with you, Dr. Metzler. The lack of tolerance that we see is more than just not being able to get legislative items done at your state level or your federal level or at city council or in other state world governments. It's getting to a point in time where this stuff is so bubbling over that the type of attacks you used to see on politicians in the 50s and the 60s and the early 70s, from everybody from whether underground to just, lone wolves, you're starting to see all over again. Now, I understand that they designated the one in Great Britain as a terrorist attack, but the truth of the matter is Gabby Giffords wasn't that long ago. You've seen other things. I mean, Rand Paul wasn't that long ago. You have some of these incidences, whether it's in Britain or here or elsewhere around the world, where politicians are under attack, whether it's a coup. I mean, we talked about Haiti just a couple months ago. People forget about that transpiring, all the way to what we just saw earlier this week.
Well, so first, let me just put Great Britain in context, because as you know, I was educated there. Let me just put that in context. As it relates to Great Britain, that attack actually does not surprise me. It doesn't surprise me in large part because Great Britain decided a long time ago to let everybody and their mama up into Great Britain. And so for them to now say it's a terrorist attack, well, it's terrorists who you let in. In Great Britain, you can be from country ABC, stand on the soapbox on the corner and say, y'all are the most racist, ignorant, and there's nothing that can be done about that. So that's a larger conversation. But as it relates to the attacks here, Rand Paul, Gabby Gifford, etc., we have become unhinged. We're unhinged in large part because you have a number of people on both sides of the aisle, whether it's the far right or the far left, who essentially don't want to have discussion. They are resorting to other means. And that's the reality. That's where we find ourselves as a society. And, I was on a show earlier this week when the conversation is, well, did the left start it or did the right? I don't give a damn who started it. The question is, what are we going to do about it? So you're not going to get me down a rabbit hole talking about, well, no, it was the left, it was Obama. And no, it was the right, it was Trump with the insurrection. No. The question is, what are we as a people and as a society willing to do about it?
Melanie and Billy Joel answered it best. He basically said, we didn't start the fire. And, I know I'm being a little silly, but the truth is to Dr. Metzler's point, I didn't digress anything. I told a bad joke. You don't get to drink.
Oh, well, same thing.
Yeah, bad jokes will make you want to drink. But to the point, Melanie, you know, the truth is we're so far down the rabbit hole that you can do this forever trying to unball the ball of yarn as far as who started it. But nobody seems to be interested in stopping it.
By the way, Obama started it. No, I'm just kidding. Oh, but not really. Was that wrong? Did I just like destroy your whole like intro to that question? But
yes, Melanie, you actually did. So we're skipping you. Jeff, you go first, then we'll let her come back in. Thank you very much.
I mean, the thing is, we've had political violence since our country started. Yeah. And when it comes to the UK, Dr. Metzler is right. And there were people in the UK who were sounding the clarion call on this whole immigration thing. Mm-hmm. Even up to 15 years ago, I remember seeing people making videos about it. Mm-hmm. So it is a different animal from what's happening over here. But yeah, a lot of it is them bringing people in and not really vetting them and not really paying attention to who they're allowing to come into the country. And we're actually a lot better with that, but people can still slip through the cracks. They only have to be right once. But when it comes to political violence here, I mean, we had the shooting of Steve Scalise and also Gabby Giffords, like you said, Lenny. And it's coming out of this toxic political environment that we have right now. And it started a long time ago. I think it was starting even before Obama. There is no one side that is to blame here. Yeah. Because you've had right-wing violence, and the authorities are even saying right-wing violence could become an issue based on the chatter that they've been seeing. I don't think that they should still be ignoring radical Islamic terrorism because we've still been having that. But I think that when it comes to what's happening here is just the tensions that are occurring. I mean, we've got the media on both sides inflaming tensions all over the place. We've got politicians on both sides inflaming tensions all over the place. It shouldn't have been a shock about what happened to Rand Paul with his neighbor, or the person who tried to shoot the people at the baseball game a few years ago. Yeah. And I hate to say this, but this will probably keep happening because there doesn't seem to be anybody in a position of power who is actually genuinely trying to calm things down. I mean, there are a lot of journalists that wish they could, but those aren't the ones that get pushed. The ones who get pushed are the ones who are there to make you hate people on the other side or make you think that people on the other side hate you. So until this stops, I mean, and especially since we can use social media to do it now, we can use alternative media to do it now. Until this stops, I don't see it getting better.
All right, so I'm going to play off of something that Melanie said because it makes what she said a little bit more palatable, and I can use it. And it's something I've said on WVON, the Talk of Chicago 1690 AM, which, of course, when you hear what I'm about to tell you, you can imagine it made me really, really popular on the south side of Chicago. But Melanie, I'm going to set you up for this. You said it was Obama's fault. One of the things I used to say on my radio show 10 years ago was the fact that if there was anybody that could bring down the tensions, it was the first African-American president with all the political capital that had not been seen ever in American history. And he decided to be a Chicago politician and not a great unifier. And once he decided to do that, all bets were off, and we may have lost a generational moment to bring Americans back into a unifying fold that we could have had if he took it a little bit more seriously. I always point people back to this. In 2009, when Eric Holder said, you know, we're a nation of cowards when it comes to talking about race, President Obama was at a fork in the road. He could have said, yes, you're right, and we need to have that conversation. Or you can do what he did, which is basically say, well, I probably wouldn't have said it like that. Eric, he kind of gave him the Heisman a little bit. And by the time he wanted to talk about race, it was like, nah, bro, it's too late. You're in term 2, you're way out the door. So
go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, he didn't start it, but he was uniquely positioned to help stop it, and it didn't quite go down that path. What say you, Melanie?
Right, and I completely agree with you. I mean, I was being, you know, a smart hiney when I said that he started. But he had a huge opportunity that I feel like he completely blew. And I'll add to that by saying that I believe that Barack Obama gave birth to us having a Donald Trump. Anybody who analyzes politics and understands how politics work. If you look at that dynamic,
or race in America, or race in America, just to be fair.
But I think it going to a grand scale and a political scale, like people were not really like taking sides politically, like we did based on race, the way we did during the Obama administration. And I think that made some white folks mad, and they were like, we're going to elect Donald Trump. And I think that's how we got Donald Trump. And I voted for Trump twice. So I'm not, save the mean tweets saying like I'm like an anti-Trumper. I'm totally not. I voted for him both times. However, just looking at the situation, President Obama had a huge opportunity to unify the country, and he did the opposite of that.
Well, and I would say, as it relates to that, Miss Scarlett, he ain't know nothing about birthing no babies. Because that is essential.
How the hell are you gonna reference Gone with the Wind? I mean, Jeff doesn't even get all in the family. You want to go back to like black and white movies.
but
yeah, frankly, I don't give a damn.
See, there we go. And you translate that now to Jeff's boo, the vice president, and there we go. Same situation. Girl, what are you doing except having movies with child actors from Canada? Like, really?
But there's a difference with that, though, Dr. Metzler. And I'm going to say this, and I'm going to hand it back to you, which is this. She doesn't have anywhere close to his charisma. She doesn't have anything close to his backstory. She has nothing like that. There is no Michelle Obama in the background. There are no two cute black girls in the background. There are no two black Harvard-educated attorneys in the background. And she doesn't come from Chicago, where everybody from MLK March to Jesse Jackson lives, to Farrakhan lives, and the only black senators to that point of time came from was Illinois. So I get what you're saying about her, but she's like here, and his opportunity was a lot higher, not just because he was running for the president.
Well, all of that is true, but he also didn't have Willie Brown. She did, but I digress.
You didn't have to. You didn't have to do that. That's misogynistic comment, Dr. Metzler.
Wow. The alcohol is flowing strong.
Every woman, I don't care who you are, uses all of their assets to advance themselves professionally.
No, they don't.
Not the ugly ones.
No.
Let me finish. To what extent they use those assets is up to them.
That's still not a true statement.
If you're going to tell me for one moment that if you're an attractive woman, you don't have an advantage over somebody who's got a unibrow and one eye in the middle.
What did you say? Hold on. Let's break this down, because what you said was a woman's going to use it to her advantage. That's not the same as somebody taking that and saying, oh, I would prefer this, that, and the other. Somebody actively using their physical attractiveness to try to advance themselves in a field is not the same as somebody looking at their physical appearance and them giving them an advantage. Because one you can't help. One you cannot help. The other you can.
When it comes to men, I'm going to keep it 100 again. That could be a smile and a hair flip with a master's degree. I'm just saying.
Well, and
hair flip goes a long way to getting that, puts a little extra icing on the cake when you got the education and experience to back it up. Would it Bey say? Would it Beyonce say she's going to be in the meeting to help you seal the deal? That's fine.
Okay.
They don't need her in the meeting, but she's fine and it helps.
Okay, but I mean, the fact that the fact that there was a meeting in the ladies' room and she'll be back soon, it's really not even the point here. The point is, had you used that and now you're the vice president, you're at that level, girl, what are you doing?
Well, you should be able to back it up. Absolutely.
Zero. So yeah, okay, you use that. Do what you gotta do. You use your assets to in your analogy. However, now you've used your assets literally and figuratively, and at this point, now you are unable to perform for the nation. I'll leave it there.
So Jeff,
No,
did you notice, Jeff? Before we continue, did you notice, Jeff, how Dr. Metzler lawyerly basically said in your analogy, as if to tell Melanie, okay, I don't agree with you. I'm just going to back away from that, but I'm going to use what you said for what I want to explain, although I don't agree with you 100%, but I'm going to be nice about it because we're on camera and this is the show. Did you catch that? Because I caught that. Because it seems as though she was leaning towards my perspective than hers when he did that. Just want to ask you if you caught that.
No, not really. I'm not even sure how we even got here.
You were done. You're like, I want to stay out of this. I put my head down and was just like trying to stay out of the way. I was hoping you take me off.
Somebody brought up Willie Brown. And I'm just saying that every woman does it to some degree or another.
No, they don't. I don't agree with that at all. I don't think that every woman is going to use her attractiveness to try to get ahead in her career.
Right.
You're right. The unattractive ones don't.
Exactly. Thank you.
I'm taking myself off camera for. I'm gonna let this whole.
But if
Let me know when you all come back
One
from
of us
like
is
the
gonna
age
get
of Mad Men in the 1950s, and I'll come back on the show.
I'm saying that is, you are very naive, Mr. McAllister, if you think for 1 second that attractive women don't enhance their attractiveness if they have a male person that's interviewing them, and they tone it down if they have a female person that's interviewing them. You are high if you think they don't consider that.
You said
I kind of agree with Melanie on this, honestly.
Hold on. Now I'm going to get lawyeristic on you. You said every woman. And that's where the catch is. You're saying every woman does that. And I'm disagreeing that every woman does that.
Every woman who's got the skills to fill the bill.
Ooh.
All right, hold on. Because now we get, no, I still disagree with that because I got a daughter.
He's right, bro.
I have a wife. You know, I can start naming women that I know that are attractive women that don't do that. So do some do that? I'm sure there are some that do that. Just like,
so you're telling me that they never consider at all their appearance when they go.
No, that's not what
and
you're saying.
They're going to some kind of interview.
That
And
now you're blurring a line, Melody. You're blurring a line. Considering your appearance is not the same as using your assets to try to advance your career. Don't start shifting the criteria of what you said.
It's all in the way you do your eyes, you look at a person, that kind of thing.
God of the living God. Let me please get off this topic.
I'll say just one quick thing. I don't think I've ever met a woman who has...
as you do that.
What?
I just said do it carefully. I'm just being facetious.
Oh,
go ahead.
I'll just say this right here. I don't think I've ever met a woman or conversed with a woman on this subject who has told me that she doesn't do what Melanie is describing. I'll just put that out there.
Thank you. I'm keeping it 100 for real. I'm just telling you. Now, if I'm being interviewed by a woman, particularly a black woman, tone it totally down. Wear glasses, hair up, look as least attractive as possible because it's intimidating to other women. But if I'm meeting with a dude,
right, that's a thing too.
Yep. Slightly above the knee, spiked heels, absolutely business-like, but spiked heels, the makeup, the hair, the eyes, the whole nine, because you're trying to get it done. And if you're telling me for 1 second that even subliminally that does not affect a man's decision, you are severely naive.
I've hired people. I've been in a position to hire people, and I can tell you that there's at least one man on the planet that's not going to work with.
Oh,
and
really?
I know there are other people like me.
You work with all ugly chicks? That's what you're telling me?
I say that there might be men that wouldn't work with, but still.
All the chicks you work with are hideous? That's what you're telling me?
No, that's not the case. I am transitioning the conversation because we are never going to agree on this topic. And
There's
I
going to
don't
be an
know.
ongoing debate. I can feel it.
I would like to, as they said in the song, blame it on the alcohol, but I'm not certain.
Listen, I'm not saying that it gets you the job, but you use every skill in your arsenal to get what you're trying to get. That's all.
An advantage. It increases
it
increases the odds.
Is that you not hard to look at? You're gonna add that in the pot. That's all.
It's ironic we're talking about employment because apparently a report came out today. You like how I transitioned that? That's that former talk show hosting skill right there for you.
Very good.
There was a report that came out this week that said there was a record amount of people that quit their jobs over the last couple of months. That quit their jobs, Jeff. Now, we could talk about the unemployment benefits, but we also got to talk about the mental health impact of going through a pandemic and work conditions and unemployment conditions and all these other things. Going through all this with COVID-19 and how it's impacted the economy, are we looking at how it's going to impact our, not just the economy, but our national esteem and our view of work moving forward? Because that's stunning. We're trying to open up the society and people were just like, look, screw it. I almost died, or screw it. I knew somebody that died, or screw it. I don't need to go back to work because of the extended benefits or whatever. And they're just deciding to just chill versus going back to normal because we claim we wanted normal so bad. And now that we got it, some people are like, it's overrated.
You know, I think this pandemic has done a number on the American psyche, especially when it comes to employment. I do expect that those numbers are going to be better because the enhanced federal unemployment benefits stopped on September, and some stopped even sooner. So I do think that that's going to change. But what we're also not considering is for the people who were working, what was their experience? I mean, I wrote an article a few months ago about how people working in the restaurant industry were dealing with a very increased number of rude customers who were angry because they weren't able to get their food as quickly because the restaurants were understaffed. So everything took longer, or if there were mistakes made, or if people had to train up a new staff, that's stressful. I would imagine that would translate into a lot of other industries as well, not just hospitality. But if you're working for a company or a small business and it's harder for you to do your job, that's putting a lot more stress on you. And it wouldn't surprise me if people quit and just said, you know, screw this. I don't know what to do anymore. I mean, maybe wait until things do go back to normal. And on top of that, we don't actually know when things are going to go back to normal because we thought we were going to be back to normal earlier this year. And then the Delta variant happened. And now I'm seeing rumblings indicating that might be running its course. But what if something else comes up? I mean, we know that Democrats are going to hold on to these COVID restrictions as long as possible. They're going to milk this thing for all it's worth. They can't do it forever, but we don't know when this thing is going to end. So, I mean, we've got this uncertainty piled on top of everything else. I mean, drug use has gone up. Alcoholism has gone up. People have been smoking more. I mean, it's just, and people have become more unhealthy because of this whole thing. So it's really, it hasn't just messed with us physically or economically, it's messing with our psyche, especially if you live in a state like California or New York, where they keep locking you down and then letting you back up. Or now that we got vaccine mandates and people are fighting that, you've got COVID mandate or mask mandates in the schools. I think it's really taken its toll. And I think we're underestimating how much it's taken its toll.
Dr. Metzler.
Yeah, I agree with what Jeff said. You know, there is, and for folks just simply not showing up to work, but my question really is, where y'all getting money from? I mean, because you look at all of these people who supposedly are not going to work, you get on the highway is crowded, they all up in Publix. We don't have Piggly Wiggly anymore. So they're not up in there, but they're all up in Publix, they're in the malls. So where are you getting the money from? And how long is this going to last? I understand the psychological impact. The question then becomes, what's the practical impact? And if you look at the airline industry, for example, flight attendants have never had to be as insulted and attacked as much as they are currently being attacked. So what about their mental health and their stability while they're simply trying to really serve the public in the best way that they can. And so while the Democrats are talking about all this human infrastructure and all of that kind of stuff, instead of talking about issues of free community college, I think you need to be talking about how do we provide mental health services and support moving forward. So from a business perspective, we can have a capable and willing workplace. That's a significant issue. And there's a major economic impact of that people simply seem to be ignoring.
Melanie, I mean, the truth of the matter is if you're struggling with this and you work for Southwest Airlines, you probably aren't working right now, or you cancel a whole bunch of flights because of how you're dealing with, to what Jeff mentioned earlier, vaccine mandates and their perspectives on work conditions right now. But, you know, you look at this and there's these record number of people quitting their jobs. I mean, what say you? Where are we going to go as an American society when you have all these things that they haven't just shifted us out of normal for a second. It's just completely created a new definition of normal that might be imprinted upon this country for a decade.
It might be, and it's certainly happening in education. I was explaining to someone the other day. I said I see 90 kids a day, and I happen to work in a computer lab. I teach computer applications as well as financial literacy, and a lot of times I have to be up on the kids in order to teach them. And most teachers do if they care about their job. You can't teach a kid from 6 feet away if you're trying to help them. You just can't. It just doesn't work that way. There's no social distancing going on inside the classroom. I'm in a classroom with 27 kids at a time, 25 kids at a time. There's none of that being done, and there's a fair amount of stress there, and educators are retiring at a high rate or just completely switching careers because of the situation in the classroom. It's dangerous and it's mentally taxing on people. So I can understand why people are doing it and why people are saying, you know, especially women are getting out of the workplace. If you have, you know, a husband who makes enough money for you to not be able to work, or the risk just doesn't not worth the money, I could totally see why a woman would be like, forget it. I'm in search of a sugar daddy right now. No, I'm just kidding.
You're really trying to bring the whole assets conversation back into this, aren't you?
I'm just kidding.
He really is.
He's taking applications, guys.
Yeah.
He's really trying to do
that. But I'm just saying, I can see why women who are attached, who are married or whatever, have kids, would be like, forget this. This is not worth it.
The question kind of goes to this, though, and I'm going to throw it out there to all three of you and just chime in as you see fit. One of the big pushbacks from conservatives in America is that with Democrats running things, they're trying to move us towards a socialistic society where the American ingenuity is diminished, and therefore, because it's not appreciated as much, people don't necessarily try to do that. And when you look at the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic and you hear statistics like this, one could make the case that this is coming to bear. Now, I'm not saying that it is, but it seems to line up with the narrative that we've heard over the last couple of years, which is if you diminish the ingenuity of the American people, the entrepreneurialism of the American people, and you encourage them not to be that way, you might get these type of results. And here we sit. What do y'all think? Is this playing out that way or no? Well,
I would say in part, but the other part that I would say to conservatives, and I say this all the time, what are you trying to conserve? It seems to me that we're not trying to conserve anything. So there's that issue, number one. Number two, as it relates to, so yeah, I get the message. I hear the narrative. What I want us as conservatives to do is to talk about solutions. We are still too stuck in the talking points. Oh, communism, socialism, and we're putting these words together. Look, here's what I want to know. What are the alternatives? How does it impact me? And what do you want to do? As conservatives, That's what we're trying to conserve. We are trying to conserve those entrepreneurial spirits. We're trying to conserve all of those things, but we are getting lost in the talking points. It's time for us to move away from the talking points and the tired narratives.
So where do we go from here? I mean, is there any way to push us out of it? I mean, to Dr. Metzler's point, and I'll start with you, Melanie. I'll go to Jeff, and then we'll talk about some other stuff before we go, because Jeff brought a really crazy story to us. But Melanie, I mean, are there ways under a Biden presidency, with the Dems running the Congress and a split Senate, where you can have real solutions that can, hate to say this phrase because, you know, people on the left go nuts, trickle down to the states, that can actually make a difference to get people back to work and encouraged and inspired to get back to work, which of course is different than just going and doing a job and, you know, being there until you're pushed out or you just can't take it anymore.
I hate to sound like a pessimist, but I don't think with the current state of the Congress that we are going to be able to do it. I think the only way that we're going to be able to do it is if Republicans get back the majority or the House and or the Senate, so that we can actually get some stuff done. The way we are situated now in the Congress, we're not getting anything done. We are too split to get anything done. And as Republicans, the people who are in power are really just complaining about Biden, but not bringing about any solutions. And with 2022 fast approaching, we need to start talking about what we're going to do differently, rather than just whining about President Biden and the current House as it stands, and of course the Senate as well, because it's not, you know, it's so split we can't really do much, but stop Democrats hopefully from doing what they're trying to do.
Jeff, one of the complaints we heard not too long ago was that Republicans had control of everything, and they didn't quite get everything done they were supposed to get done either.
That's
so
what I was gonna say.
Is it really a matter of getting Republicans back in there, or is it a matter of getting some real leaders in there?
You know, I'm pessimistic about what will happen when Republicans do take it back, because like you said, when they had the executive branch and the legislature, they did very little. But here's the thing. I'm not convinced that they can really do much anyway. I mean, there's going to be change. It's going to happen at the state and local level. Those are the areas that we need to focus on if we actually want to affect change. The federal government might be able to do some things here and there. Let's say Republicans got in control and we got some actual competent people in there who actually want to do more than just get clicks and likes. If that happened, that would be a positive thing. And there might be some things that they can do to make things better. But realistically, the biggest impact is going to come from our mayors and our city council, and to a slightly lesser extent, our governor and our state legislatures. So that's why we need to focus there, because, I mean, if we are going to get out of this mess, that's where it's going to come from, at least in part, because there's also the societal factor as well, not just the government.
Exactly. Well, I don't know about that. Government's everything, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
I'm just kidding, everybody. I'm just kidding. Good.
The only thing I would say relative to conservatives and Republicans, and to Jeff's point, I would suggest you study the 10th Amendment, because in fact, there are so many things that the federal government is doing that is violative of the 10th Amendment. But when I talk to conservatives about the 10th Amendment, they're like, what they say? So because I think the majority of the work is the federal government at this point, they're trying to exercise power that they don't have. So for conservatives, I say it's not a matter of just getting conservatives in. It's a matter of getting conservatives in who, A, understand the 10th Amendment, and B, are not the clicks and likes conservatives. But in any event, I think just absolutely right. This is about state and local government. DC is the swamp. It will continue to be the swamp. I don't care who's in control, because at the end of the day, whether it is Republicans or Democrats, the lobbyists are the ones who run DC. People are talking about drain the swamp. No, they're filling up the swamp. if you're looking for the swamp to be drained, ain't gonna happen. It is continuing to be filled up by the lobbyists.
Well, the truth of the matter is there are too many conservatives nowadays that confuse the 10th Amendment and know more about the 10th Commandment when it applies to federal government than
There you go.
the 10th Amendment, which kind of puts government in its proper place. And until you fix that, you're not going to be able to get 10th Amendment conservatives to actually,
Correct.
or 10th Amendment politicians to be back in the federal government. But before we go, I want to bring up a story that Jeff brought up to us, which the little green thing that's on the GEICO commercials, he done going to court, y'all. He's getting sued by a woman in Florida that sued GEICO because she caught a venereal disease from a dude in a car and wants his car insurance apparently to pay for damages. I mean, Jeff, it's your story. I mean, there's so many places to go. I mean, were they driving when this happened? Was it a stationary car? Was the car started? Was it registered? Did he have a valid license? I mean, these are questions that GEICO would ask before you go, you're really going to put in a medical claim for this? Or maybe the other way around. Maybe you ask the questions in reverse order. I don't know.
Well, GEICO is countersuing because the plaintiffs won't even reveal who they are. They won't reveal their identity. And so that's part of their countersuit against
somebody's buried in that. That's what that means. Somebody was where they were. Honey, I'm going to get the milk. I'll be right back. That's what that sounds like.
Very possible. Very possible.
Yeah.
But they're also alleging that this couple is doing this as part of a scheme. So basically, the woman got an STD. She got HPV. And I guess they're just trying to make lemons out of lemonade here. They're trying to have the silver lining. Hey, if I got to have an STD, then maybe we can use this to get some money from GEICO since they are insure your car.
Yeah, because nobody's down with HPV or STD.
But OPP, yes. But apparently there's some OPP involved here.
Exactly. The letters, they're not down with so much. Melanie, I know you got something to say about this because 3 martinis in, of course you have something to say about this. Go ahead.
I'm just thinking if they have a case that I'm suing my homeowners for my entire last marriage. The mattress company, maybe? Can I sue them?
Lord.
This could be a groundbreaking case. Yeah. This could get a precedent.
Sue my homeowners for that situation. I feel, and it's probably like an ex-boyfriend or two whose mattress companies I need to sue, as long as we're talking about.
Because see, here's the thing. First of all, I'm going to go back to what I said previously. Rule 12b-6, failure to state a claim upon which relief can be granted. So the court's going to dismiss this, number one. Number two, the lawyer who is bringing this case, he should be sued to have his law license revoked.
This is Tyrone Biggums that's representing this case.
I don't care about Tyrone.
Chappelle in a costume.
I don't care about Tyrone. You can call Tyrone because he ain't even home.
But you can't use my phone. I'm just saying.
Right, you can't use my phone.
Right here.
So, I mean, look, this is, it's a stunt. I mean, and there's no liability here. And really, this is just an OPP case. That's all. That's why the names aren't being revealed.
Are
you
they
down with OPP?
They're going to settle? Is that what the thought was? That they would just settle?
They're not going to settle this. They're not going to settle this. This is not even worth nuisance value. Because I go back to you down with OPP. You know me.
They were like, man, going it. Springer ain't on the air no more, is he? Well, where else can we take this story? Tabloids and GEICO. That's where it will work.
Take it to TMZ.
I don't know. When I was reading the background on this case, I was like, I think she has a case.
No,
No, you didn't.
No, you didn't. Zero legal expertise that I have.
She ain't got no case.
And I can give her a check.
TMZ don't care about HPV or STD unless there's some significant letters behind who those people are. Those acronyms got those initials got to stand for like BP for like Brad Pitt or somebody like that. Otherwise, they don't care.
Sure.
But we do. because Jeff brought it to us. Thank you, Jeff. I'm sure you're doing something more interesting than finding stories like this over the course of the next week. So why don't you share that with us as we're closing out the show?
Yeah, this week I might have some interviews coming up. I'm not quite sure yet. I took this week off as far as doing live streams, but I will be back next week with some guests, and I will be doing another audio podcast as well.
And that's with your fresh perspective, with your fresh haircut and your fresh glasses, right?
That's right.
These are fresh prints, you know. I'm just putting it out there. Melanie, what do you got going on this week? And understand that we're closing out the show, so you cannot.
I'm actually doing some radio in the California market on KHI AM, I believe, sometime next week. And I'm also going to be on Newsmax on Monday at 3:30, talking about the news of the day.
Yeah, that sounds like that's fantastic. Dr. Metzler, Mr. World Traveler, where are you going to be over the course of the next couple of days?
Well, over the next couple of days, I will be in New York, moving up to a deluxe apartment in the sky on the east side. Finally got a piece of the pie.
All I'm going to tell you is Florence is hard to work with. So you just need to be mindful of that. She's nice, but she's hard to work with. Okay? Jeff was like, please get me off this show. We got to be approaching the hour. We've gone into dangerous waters, and I agree with you, Jeff. I'm going to go out there as well. I'm going to be your life preserver, Jeff. I know that really scares you. You don't really necessarily want to hug me and tread to the shoreline, but just trust me, it'll be okay, folks.
But at that point, just one question. At that point, would you be enticed?
Oh yeah, like last week, exactly.
Okay, so apparently I missed a lot last week. That's what I'm gathering.
Well, look at your face. Apparently you didn't.
Apparently I missed it too.
Well, wrestling.
The whole wrestling and the tights and the
wrestling and the tights. Remember that?
Your guest and
vaguely.
Yeah. See, Jeff's like, I tried to block it out with a whole lot of just distance from last week's show.
I don't need that kind of trauma. That's how I deal with my PTSD.
Yeah. There you go.
You might have to sue GEICO for that. Anywho, listen, folks, we're gonna get out of here because we're afraid that somebody's going to say something that's going to be more tragic than the last several things we've been saying over the last hour or so. But make sure you check out A Fresh Perspective. Check out Melanie on Newsmax. Make sure you check out Dr. Metzler and all the wonderful things he's doing in New York and across the country. And, of course, find us here on Red and Black every single week. In the meanwhile, have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. If you're checking us out during the first part of the week, enjoy the beginning part of your week, and we'll catch up to you next Saturday. TCNGB, take care and God bless.
Take care.
Take care.
Peace.